We've got a great feature coming up called A Chat with Pat, and we always look forward to that because I tell you, Pat, you always find a way to really kind of enlighten us on different things. So who's your guest today?
Today it's Richard Spinello. He is a professor at Boston College, a member of the adjunct faculty at St. John's Seminary in Boston. His most recent book, For Catholic Philosophers, Rejoicing in the Truth. He's also written books on ethics. I could go on, but I want to get to talk to him. So the article that we are talking about was in the Catholic World Report, Catholic Fundamentalism and the Search for Truth. Welcome, Richard. So good to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So can you explain this term Catholic fundamentalism to us?
Well, it comes from a book that I wrote about, a book called Catholic Fundamentalism in America, written by Father Mark Massa, who teaches at Boston College, where I teach, as you mentioned. And his claim is that Catholic fundamentalism is something that hasn't really been explored the way Protestant fundamentalism has been, so that's why he wrote this particular book. And what it is, in his mind, is kind of a sectarian impulse, that the Church is a community of believers that's in opposition to the rest of the world. An ahistorical understanding of the Christian past, which means that the Church teaching really cannot change, and a rejection of the new paradigm. In his mind, the Church has evolved a new paradigm that really came into being during and after Vatican II, and kind of a rhetorical style that's marked by a lot of apocalyptic rhetoric, kind of militant tone, denunciation of those who don't believe in the core truths of the Catholic faith and so forth. So that's his understanding of Catholic fundamentalism. And he claims that in his book, you find it in media outlets like EWTN, Crisis Magazine, you find it in universities or colleges like Christendom College. You find it in supporters of the Latin Mass. He singles out a priest by the name of Father Gomar de Pau, who was a priest in Baltimore who tried ardently to kind of save the Latin Mass. So that's Catholic fundamentalism in Father Mass's view, and he claims that it's kind of alive and well. In his mind, these are the people who have rejected Vatican II, and rejected the changes in the Church and kind of cling to the old paradigm, the old way of doing things.
So, Richard, how would he understand orthodoxy then? Because some of the things in your article that you mentioned just seems like this is just Catholic teaching. So does he believe there is no orthodoxy? How does he look at that? Well,
I think that's a good question. It's not really clear from his book how he understands orthodoxy. The one thing that is clear is he thinks that Catholic doctrine can change, and sometimes can change pretty radically. So one of the problems with the old paradigm is that it's a belief that there's, Catholic doctrine is something static and unchangeable, and also propositional, that you can kind of capture it in propositions or statements. The way the Catechism does, and certainly the way the old Baltimore Catechism did. So Catholic teaching is something that's quite flexible. It's something that changes over time. For example, the doctrine of original sin, which was defined at Trent, is sort of what I think most Catholics accept is sort of a defect of human nature that is inherited from Adam's disobedience. That can change. So we find, and there are a lot of theologians, along with Father Massa, who would accept this, but we find about 30, 40 years ago, theologians like Rahner and Schoonenberg talking about original sin in a very different way. as sort of the social nature or solidarity in the sinfulness of all humanity, something very different from what Trent had.
So
Richard, I guess Catholic Orthodoxy would be what the Church proclaims at the moment is the truth, but it's something that can change and evolve over time.
So is that his concept of that you mentioned in your article? You talk about historical consciousness dislodges objective moral truth. So is he saying that instead of the Church speaking to the world, the Church has to take into consideration the changing circumstances of history in its own doctrine? Am I understanding that correctly?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. He refers to an essay by Bernard Lonergan. For those who may not know, Lonergan, Father Bernard Lonergan, was a Jesuit, rather famous philosopher of 30, 40 years ago. He's been dead for a while. Taught at up in the University of Toronto and also at Boston College. I remember him there. But Lonergan wrote this essay that Father Masser refers to, opposing the classicist worldview, the classical view of truth, to historical mindedness. So in the classical view, truth remains the same throughout history. Truth doesn't change.
Right.
But for the historical-minded approach, everything is sort of shaped by the changing circumstances of history. And he appeals to that. So he says, doctrine can change. Doctrine is something that is not eternally true, something that's timeless and objective, but something that can change over time. So. So therefore, Catholicism becomes this constant reinterpretation of doctrine and a constant reinterpretation of the gospel. And he would, as you suggest, he would apply this to morality. So he would say that we do indeed have to look at the culture, and we do indeed have to look at the way history is evolving, and morality has to change accordingly. And the point I was trying to make in my article was that he claims that this paradigm shift, this shift from the classical worldview to historical mindedness, is something that was articulated at the Second Vatican Council, particularly in reference to morality. But my claim is that that's not true, right? That
yes.
If you read the council documents like Dignitatis Humanae, that's really not the case. That they continue to speak about the divine law is eternal, objective, universal, and the divine law really also encompasses the natural law, which doesn't change in its first principles. They're very clear about that. So one would be hard pressed to look at the documents of Vatican II, particularly that one, which is one of the ones that talks about morality, and see evidence of this big paradigm shift that Father Massa talks about.
Oh, well, Richard, I could talk to you forever because you're right. I always say Vatican II gets a bad rap. They keep talking about stuff that's really not in the document. So thank you so much. Today our guest is Richard Spinello, professor at Boston College, member of adjunct faculty at St. John Seminary in Boston, and we were talking about an article he wrote in the Catholic World Report, Catholic Fundamentalism and the Search for Truth. Thank you, Richard.